Ladies and gentlemen, the program will begin momentarily. As a courtesy to the presenters and audience, please turn off your mobile devices at this time. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Hi. My name's Trevor Cornwell, and I'm the founder and CEO of appbackr. And we are a wholesale marketplace for apps. And what we do is try and help developers get the very best distribution for their app. And we do that using an algorithm. And we look at every app in the marketplace, and we try and find the right fit for it in terms of stores. We do the same thing for stores. We use our algorithm to be able to handpick the best apps across multiple different platforms. And I'm going to walk you through a little bit about how we do that. Before we get started, I'm interested in how many people in the audience are developers today. Okay, that's great. And how many developers have already built something for Tizen? Okay, so a few of you. Okay, and for those developers, how many of you built for iOS and or Android first? And that was sort of a gateway drug for you? You started there and then moved on to HTML5? Did all of the developers start somewhere else before starting? Yeah, okay. So really appreciate you being here. There are microphones. I'm going to take questions at the end, but I'm also very happy to take questions as we're going along. So don't hesitate if you have something either that's unclear or that you want to add to it. Very happy to take as many questions as we can. So I'm going to start out talking about the problem first. And I think if you're a developer, you know that there is a hugely fragmented marketplace. And the marketplace fragments in a couple of different ways. The first is the number of platforms. We've had some conversations today about why another platform, and there are lots of good reasons. We talked a little bit about it last night at the partner presentations about maybe why there's a need for Tizen. Challenge is, even within a given platform, developers have to decide what's the best way to be able to exploit the marketing of their app. If you're a developer on Android, you have lots of different choices. You have Amazon, Nook, which each have their own upload process. The APK has to be stored within that platform. And then there are lots of other opportunities for companies, websites, carriers who feature certain apps, and they can give an app more distribution, but you have to enter into some sort of relationship with them. And then, of course, the multi-platform issue of, do you put your app onto Windows? Do you put it onto Tizen? Yes, we hope. Firefox? Do you look at BlackBerry? What version of BlackBerry? There are a number of different technology providers out here which allow you to be able to use your app and deploy it. All sorts of different choices about how you best get your app to market. And for a developer, all of these choices are really significant because typically developers are relatively smaller shops, and they may have 1, 2, 3 people, and how you expend your resources becomes really critical. There's an issue on the other side as well for consumers. There are almost 1 million apps in iOS, just about the same for Google Play, 150,000 for Windows, 100,000 for BlackBerry, so choice is really tough. And typically, where choice takes place right now, if you're a consumer, is just looking in the top 10 list. Something like 25 publishers account for 50% of the revenue within iOS and Android. So you have a problem for a consumer where they're trying to digest all of these different apps. You also have that problem as a developer in how do you get discovered when you're one of a million. And it's a little bit of a key to what I'm going to be talking about, but a lot of people think that the answer to a great app is that it's gone viral. And that's a little bit of a myth, because in truth, most apps that do well have a significant marketing budget behind it. They're doing something to incentivize people to download their app. And there are a lot of different tools and techniques to it, but it's not as simple as an app being good that it's going to be discovered. So this problem is really not good for consumers or for developers. For consumers, they're forced to either search, and a lot of times they don't know what they're really looking for. They want something to entertain them. They want something to engage them. They don't necessarily have a specific purpose that they're looking for. Sure, if you're looking for Evernote or an app that you know, search is really good, or if you can specifically define a problem, it works. But for most consumers, most of the time, looking for something isn't the best way to find it. And within a small device, seeing a display of search results isn't as simple as it is on a larger device like a PC. And of course, for developers, they face this issue of created a great app, which they're really passionate about. They've probably spent a lot of their resources, and there's no way for them to easily get discovered. So the easy answer to it, or the obvious answer that a lot of people look to, is search, and they think, well, you know, that could solve it. But as I was saying, it doesn't seem to be a really great way to be able to find and discover apps. So we created something called Exchange, and the idea behind it is that there are thousands and thousands of good apps, and not all of them, not most of them, are sitting in the top 10. We created an algorithm that looks at a variety of different factors based on a predictive analytic machine learning model to be able to identify the apps that have the potential to be great. And this isn't some big black box Wizard of Oz kind of formula. It looks at public data. It looks at how many reviews does the app has. It looks at what are people saying about the app. Are they saying this app is fantastic, I love it? Are they saying this app crashes my Samsung device or my Motorola device or my Huawei device? And we look at the length of reviews. Are people taking time to say something about it? How long has the app been since it was last updated? There are a lot of very basic metrics that are prevalent to any app that we think can tell a lot about whether it has the potential to be great. And what we do is, with our algorithm, which I'll talk some more about, is we help these apps get to the right platforms. We help direct them to carrier channels, to OEMs, to stores that want to feature apps which are compelling. And we also work with new platforms that are looking to discover meaningful and compelling apps and help them to get to the right place on the store so that they can get the attention that they deserve. So to talk about it again as a problem where two sides are facing a similar issue leads to a marketplace as a solution. And developers are clearly facing a problem of looking for profitable solutions. The number of apps that have over $3,000 in sales is very, very low. So this dollar and a dream approach that iOS perfected, where you can put your app into what really is a consignment store and hope it works, is great if you're Apple, because you get hundreds of thousands of submissions. But if you want to make a living as a developer, if you want to get your content heard and seen and engaged, it doesn't work so well. And on the other side, what we saw was that carriers and OEMs and new platforms are also, at the very same time, looking for apps to distinguish themselves. Not to take anything away from hardware, because hardware makes a huge difference in the experience that somebody has. But once you get to that certain level of quality in terms of a device, what really distinguishes it is content. And that means that developers are hugely valuable to the success of any new platform. But what happens with most new platforms? They focus on identifying the top 20, 100, 2,000 apps that they feel are table stakes. They'll typically pay significant sums of money to get them ported over, which is fine, but all that that's done is achieved the very basic, the minimum that a consumer is willing to expect. Then maybe what they do is they play the numbers game, and they say, well, we have to have 100,000 apps in order to please an analyst or to be able to show that we have a viable platform. And then what happens with consumers? They come back and they say, you know what? This is a really suboptimal platform. It doesn't really engage me. It's not surprising me. It's not delighting me. I can get all of those apps already on another platform and more. I can get the table stakes, and I can get hundreds of thousands of things. And even though it's difficult for me to search and find them, I know that they're there. So we believe that platforms, in order to be able to distinguish themselves, have to be able to do something different. And that's where great developers come in, because we think there are many that are just undiscovered, that there are useful, relevant apps which are out there that have been created, maybe on iOS, maybe on Android, that should be on Tizen. Now, why does a developer decide not to immediately put his app onto Tizen even when he gets a phone call? Because a developer is looking at, how can I maximize the distribution of my app? And the best way for most developers to be able to do that is to figure out how to exploit their sales within a given channel. And when they look at a new platform, they ask the same questions that we would ask as a manufacturer of any good. Is it going to sell? Is it going to get distributed? Is it going to be seen? And that matching process of being able to find the kinds of apps that can perform well on a new platform is critical, because if you can answer that question for a developer, if you can say, your app has the potential to do very well because other apps like it are performing well, then you create a great match for both the developer and for the store. And that's how we get to Exchange. Exchange has a very basic goal, which is to maximize selection, profit, and distribution for apps with minimum effort. So when we started Exchange, we said, developers are not going to want to spend a lot of time and effort getting their app to different platforms. And there are lots of different solutions out there, a lot of great solutions out there. Sencha, Marmalade, that can help you create an app and have it ready for different platforms. But we think the challenge goes beyond that. A developer needs to be able to take his app, port it to different platforms, and understand how it performs. And he needs to be able to understand something about the platform to see when there's potential and opportunity, and to decide whether it's worth the time to rewrite the app, maintain it, and have an engagement with customers through that portal. So the way that we approach all of this is by having developed the App Score algorithm, which scores the apps from 1 to 10 using a variety of different elements that we talked about before, and also takes data from stores. So the stores are really telling us which of the apps that they would like to be able to feature on their platform. Then we use some antivirus screening so that we make sure that every app which goes onto a platform has been screened and scrubbed. And this goes beyond just simple antivirus protection. We look at, for emerging markets, to make sure that the app is light, that it's not pinging too many servers, because that doesn't work well for a customer in an emerging market where there's limited bandwidth, or they're paying for bandwidth at a rate higher than we're used to paying in Korea or the United States. We put together our score with a last check on the app, and then we take those apps and we score them, and then we provide those best apps, those best in category apps, to our partners so that they can feature them on the stores. So the advantage to the developer is, all of a sudden, by going through Exchange, his app is getting more distribution than it otherwise would have. And the benefit for the stores is they're getting to see the very best apps that they can have confidence in will delight customers. So we built Exchange as a platform that happens and works at a platform level. You come to Exchange, you see what your score is, and then your app gets to market. One of the things that we found is that some of the great platforms, Sencha, Marmalade, ones I was just mentioning, are the place where a developer comes and builds his app and can easily port his app to all sorts of different stores. But the developer may hold back and say, I don't want to port my app to Tizen, I don't want to port my app to BlackBerry, because it's not familiar. So we take away that unfamiliarity by integrating with platform partners and displaying the app score that that app has achieved. And then we provide an incentive to that developer right at the point where he has the choice to port. So a couple things happen. One, the developer with a great app has a chance to be able to earn some advanced revenue, which is nice. Somebody called it get-out-of-bed money. It's not money that's going to change your life, but it's money to create an incentive for you to put your app onto the platform. But just as importantly, your app then can get tracked on a dashboard so you can see the performance of your app across multiple platforms in one place. And when you see a score for a given platform that is 8.5 or above on a 1 to 10 score, you know that your app resonates with that platform. It's an incentive, it's unto itself for bringing your app to that platform. So in one place, you get an easy-to-manage dashboard. You can choose which platform to deploy your app to, and you get an automated submission through Exchange. So a lot happens to make it very easy for porting your app, for making decisions, and for getting the data about how your app is performing. It enables you to be able to track, analyze, distribute effortlessly, and get effective management over your app. Because I think that, for developers, is a really key objective. So just a quick look at how it happens. And for those of you who are here today and tomorrow, we invite you to come down to our stand. We'd love to show you and get your feedback on the score. But for a developer, you put your app into Exchange, and you see your score. And you'll first see a list of apps that match your app, and we do this across platforms. So even when you're creating an app on HTML5 and you haven't been on HTML5 before, we look to see if you have an app on Android or iOS or an existing platform so that we can get data about that to help create a score. An app that scores 8.5 or above is going to see offers for that app. And to give you a little bit of sense of what it looks like within Exchange, every developer gets this dashboard and is able to see when an app is requested by a given platform. So on any given dashboard, a developer may have 5, 10 different offers to feature his app or to have his app sourced for a particular store. And then on the other side of it, the store is able to see a lot of information about which are the right apps for its platform. So they can search using basic terms by platform. They can look at minimum number of installs. They can look at ratings. There are a whole set of advanced search features that they can do. So it's a very simple process for an operator of a store to be able to go past that top 10. And that's really the key thing that we're trying to bring to life. We think that discovery of apps doesn't happen primarily through search. It happens through curation and merchandising. If you look at the apps that sell best on iOS, it happens because a curator, someone in editorial, has decided that that's a great app. Well, we think there's a better way. That combination of looking at the underlying elements of an app so that an operator of a store can look at hundreds of thousands of apps and really figure out which are the best ones creates a great way to be able to identify and showcase the best apps. So there are a whole set of different methods that a store can use to be able to figure out which are the best apps so that they can dynamically curate their store. We give them the ability to search on everything from content maturity to the price of the app, and of course our app score is kind of the core of the whole process. Stores can also then make easy offers to developers. So sometimes we do this internally at appbackr. We'll get the criteria that a store is looking for and we'll make offers directly to developers. But many platforms like BlackBerry will use our platform to make offers directly to developers. And they're able to nuance that offer based on what their needs are. And I was talking at the very beginning about table stakes and about certain apps being very necessary to a platform and being highly coveted, and stores will pay significant amounts of money to get that app over to the platform. We think what's interesting about this is that we can democratize that process so that every developer gets the opportunity to get an offer to be on a store. And again, we think it's great for stores because it gives them a chance to be able to distinguish themselves by offering really compelling and meaningful apps. And most importantly, it's something that benefits consumers because they're not finding just the apps that everybody else was seeing. They're seeing great apps, your app maybe, that hasn't got exposure but has all the elements to be great. So that's a little bit about Exchange. And I would be happy, we have a little bit of time left, and I'd be happy to take any questions, discuss anything that anybody would like to talk about. So if you have a question, there are microphones in a few places on the floor, and please feel free to ask. Somebody's got to have a question.
Hi there. Thank you for your interesting, informative introduction. You must at appbackr, you must have a particular perspective on the dynamic of HTML5 versus native technologies as an enabler and perhaps as a barrier to applications. Would you care to comment on what you're advising application developers and platform vendors about native versus HTML5?
Yeah, so I think HTML5 is where mobile wants to be. I said that last night when I was talking, and I feel it really strongly. And I think, in a way, because HTML5 5 years ago wasn't snappy and responsive on a given device, it made native hugely appealing. I think with companies like Samsung hugely behind Tizen, and I should say for Mozilla and others behind Firefox, I think a lot of these issues are going to get resolved. So if you buy into the idea that HTML5 is going to be good pretty soon, then the question is, what do you do with it? And I think that there's a huge amount of opportunity for developers. I think one of the things that becomes very appealing very quickly is to take your app and to really look at localizing it very efficiently and very effectively. I think HTML5 makes that possibility much, much easier. I think the idea of creating apps that integrate with websites is hugely appealing because you can do it. You can get outside of the walled garden. I think that HTML5 in this context of this conference is appealing because it gives you the chance to be first. And I think that's can't be overstated. The idea of being one of, even on Google Chrome, which is a relatively mature market, the number of apps that they have which are actually apps is low, 20,000. So the ability to be one of those that's featured and the ability to be able to go cross-platform or cross-dialect within a platform. If you take HTML5 as the platform and the various flavors of it as dialects, I think is huge. So I think exploiting it by getting out early, by getting into HTML5 stores, and then really looking at local possibilities, especially when you have a platform like Tizen, which is looking at a country-by-country rollout rather than a worldwide rollout. I think to get that early credibility can be a big factor in success.
If a developer takes an open source application, puts an interface on top of it, releases an application, and then digitally signs that, and then goes through Exchange, how does an end user, or does an end user see the same signature, and is the application unmodified, so that as an end user, I know that an application that comes through your system is exactly as the developer released it?
Yeah, it's a good question. So you're going to go through the 90% answer is you're going to go through the upload process just as you would in any case. You're going through Exchange basically to look at it as just a layer where we're going to give you an SDK so that we can track for you on your dashboard, but you're going to go through that submission process just as you always would. If, on the other hand, you want us to act as the publisher, we can do that. But 90% of the developers that would go through Exchange will go through and directly upload. Where we're providing the value is giving you the information about what you need to do and what the financial incentives are, and then paying that out to you.
Yeah, I cannot imagine how to evaluate how to rank applications. So can you give us some key ideas for evaluating and scoring apps?
Sure. Well, I mean, the way that it happens today is on a star rating system. I mean, that's the most basic way to do it. And you know, absent any magic, you would look at the star rating systems and the number of downloads, and that would tell you which apps are delighting customers. And you know, the apps that have 1 million downloads and have more than 50,000 5-star reviews and not more than X number of 1-star reviews would be 10, and then you'd go down the list. Where what we've done is add in a variety of other points of data. How long has it been since the app was last updated? Reading the review itself, get a lot of information about what people write. And we can do that on a device-by-device basis. Some of the carrier partners that we work with will have a particular device that they're particularly concerned about. And looking at this from the store perspective, when NTT Docomo or Verizon or whomever has an app that doesn't perform well, the customer isn't calling the developer, he's calling the store. So there's a real concern to make sure that the app works. So reading call it an exuberance review, positive or negative, when somebody says, this app crashed my phone, or this app was incredible on my phone, is very useful information. We use all of that type of public information by scraping all the stores country by country. So it also enables us to be able to look at an app that's doing well in a given country. I think over time there's ways to do pattern checking. So there might be associations between different kinds of countries. So an app that's doing well in Italy should do well in Spain. And then we put that into a machine learning model, so we're getting smarter as we go along about which apps are great. Yeah.
Okay, one more quick question. Then, do you have any ideas on starting application? If there is no such kind of evaluation information available, then what can you do?
Yeah, so it's a very good question. And if specifically first of all, there's some apps that won't have a score at all because we don't have any data for it. And if we don't have any data, you can't score it. When we look at HTML5, when we look at Tizen, it's going to be very rare. It'll be the true outlier of an app that starts here. It's probably that developer has created an app on another platform. So the first problem to solve for is matching the title of an app, because it changes from platform to platform. So we've tried to do that in a nuanced way. But I also think that even for apps that are brand new, starting fresh, I mean, besides looking at developers' previous activity as a leading indicator of how it can perform, I do think there's a lot of information that you could do to build a score. We haven't done it yet for apps that have had no exposure, no traction at all. And it's basically deconstructing what a store uses to evaluate an app going up. I mean, looking at things like screenshots, looking at the length of reviews. A lot of those kind of merchandising elements, I think, are very important. And then there's some internal testing that you would have to do for a brand new app to get a meaningful score from it.
I'm sorry. So if there's an application using operating system specific APIs, which doesn't run on other operating systems, how do you screen those applications which should not be compatible with others? How do you gonna find them out?
Give me an example, if you would.
I don't know, device-specific APIs for iOS. If there's an app using those APIs, that be difficult to run on other applications unless app developer do other programming effort to support the compatibility.
Yeah, well, so that's a good question. So basically, if you have an app that, let's say, exploits certain APIs on one platform that doesn't have a need to exploit them on another, how would you be able to come up with a meaningful score? It's a good question. I think that's something that will, just within the HTML5 universe, certainly become an issue, because there will be some apps within Tizen in particular that exploit a lot of APIs. If you were going from Firefox to Tizen, that wouldn't be so much of an issue, because Firefox doesn't have the API calls. The short answer to it is that in a machine learning model, you have to keep adding. And so you have to factor out some apps because they only work on certain APIs. You'd have to weight positively an app that exploits certain APIs really well. The most experience that we've had with it has been for Nook. And we had to take our basic score, and then they had a whole series of deal stoppers for them. I mean, if the app had in-app advertising, it wasn't an app that they wanted to have. If there was any sort of payment outside. Whereas for Nokia, we do a lot of work around emerging market apps, or we've been engaged with them in a lot of discussions about how to be able to score for emerging market apps is a better way to describe it. There we're looking at how many servers does that app ping? How much does the app weigh? Because they're looking at data usage, which I was talking a little bit about before. So you have a basic app score, and the store either filters it in the filter screen that you saw before, or where we have an ongoing relationship, we create a custom algorithm so that we can really identify the best apps, and some of that would credit or debit, based on how it interacts with APIs.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a good question.
Can we use your service from Japan?
Yeah, absolutely. It's agnostic to.
You said, but you're checking what's in the review.
Yes.
User review, and so you check the other languages too.
Yeah, we've done it in a number of languages. We have more to do. We're not yet doing in Japanese for reading the reviews, so there's a limitation there. But we get a lot of data nonetheless from the number of star reviews and so forth. So we're not able to read the reviews that we can't read, but we can get everything else. And as we go along, we'll start to add language support.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. It's good to think about that for our roadmap. Any other questions? Okay, well, I really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you about what we're doing. We have a stand downstairs, and please come by and visit us, and we'd be happy to chat with you there. Thanks again, and have a good rest of the show.